Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever part of the globe you are in, whether in New Zealand or in India or in the Pacific or Americas or Europe. It's a great privilege to come to your screens, to your phones. My name is Sunil Kaushal and I'm the host for Weekender on Sunday. What a week it has been in New Zealand and globally also, and in sports too. Let us not forget that. But today I will be joined by four members of parliament from different parties, from Labour, Green, ACT and National, talking about issues that matter to the community. Real issues for real people, for real lives and real community. This week, the TMR poll came out, and what it showed was that there was a drop in the votes or in the polls for Labour, while Green obviously came up and ACT remained same and National also went up. So as we can see that Labour was on 41, National on 24, ACT on 17, Greens on 9, New Zealand First, don't ever write them off, on 4.2 and the Maori Party on 2.4. So obviously it seems like, as David Parker put it, the minister, that it's COVID fatigue and people are getting really tired of lockdowns and what the plans, etc. are. But are there plans? Like we have been hearing that there is a plan. Seems like there has been a flip-flop or no one's certain what's going to happen with the COVID recovery. However, we've also seen that over 165,000 migrants living in New Zealand have been given a acceptance to apply for residency. However, this morning, as the reports pointed out, that the immigration will be looking at quirking the policy again. So does that mean that those who are here now have an uncertain future? For example, someone finishing a doctorate needs to reapply. And for medical and health high needs, people have to leave the country because they have to have that status. So it's becoming very confusing at the moment. The other thing has been a big MIQ policy or debate that has been going on. People who are double vaccinated coming or returning back to the country need to spend days in the MIQ, but then there are people who have been sent home with COVID positive to stay at home. So MIQ looks like a wasted space now. The other thing is the small businesses. They are really hurting, or are they not? One person says, or one school of thought says, that the government is giving them some sort of a resurgence program, resurgence subsidy. It may not be enough, but at least it is something, while others say that's not enough. As you can see, 26,744 businesses have been wiped off the New Zealand companies registered in the last 8 months. What's happening to the small businesses? Is someone listening to the ethnic communities? And to finish it off today, we will be joined by an ex-Black Caps player who's played in the World Cup finals in 50 over limited games previously, and has also been the New Zealand Cricket Board member for over 8 years, Jeff Allett. We will hear from Coach Gary Stead also about tonight's must-win game that New Zealand and Australia are in. And don't forget the big upset of the rugby where the Irish team beat the All Blacks. Anyway, let's bring on our four invited guests today. From the Labour Party, Dr. Gaurav Sharma; from National Party, Melissa Lee; from the Greens Party, Gloria; and also from ACT, James McDowell. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me tonight. Great to have you. Gaurav, you must be happy that things have been going well in the immigration front and the vaccination front.
Yes, definitely. First of all, I just want to thank, the Indian community. We're almost at 100% vaccination. And, that's a really good news, as part of the team of 5 million. It's good to see that people are playing their part. Where there are still communities which are not obviously, close to the 90% mark. But it's good to see that leadership from the Indian communities regarding this. So quite happy with how things are going. Similarly, on the immigration front, I do want to acknowledge that there's been, it's taken a bit of time, and the result is something that has been welcomed across the board. And I do want to thank again a lot of people who have been involved in that discussion and that feedback, especially from migrant communities on that. So it's a really good outcome.
Do you think we will reach 90%?
Oh yes, I mean, look, we are now at a point where 80% of New Zealanders are vaccinated, and so I mean, for example, if you look at Hamilton, we're 90% of Hamiltonians are vaccinated at least one dose, and I think, as we might have said a few interviews ago, it just means that those people are going to get the second vaccination. So those people will get their vaccination and make it 90% double dose, and I'm quite confident. Working on the ground as well, I was working on Super Saturday. I was helping out with vaccinations, and I met so many people who were actually getting their first vaccination. And it was a little bit surprising. I asked them, why has it taken you so long to get vaccinated? And people had very good reasons. Some people were saying, look, I've got 2 jobs, or I'm a single parent, I've got kids at home, I just haven't had the time. I met one person who actually said to me, I'm neither for or against vaccination. He was an Indian young man. And he said, I just want to go back to India for a visit. And I know that at some point, whenever I do visit, vaccinations are going to be required. So that's why.
We'll hold that thought. We'll come to the MIQ thing. James, ACT and National has been calling for a Freedom Day. There has been a lot of confusion, right? Do you think 80% is enough for the country to open up?
Sorry, is that for Melissa or myself?
She called your name, James.
All right, very good. Sorry. Look, I think it's very good, the progress of vaccination. What we've said in a press release this morning is that we're challenging the no jab, no job concept that the government has been running with. We just think that with vaccinations are doing very well. What we're looking at in certain sectors is this problem that we've had for a very long time, exacerbated by the immigration crisis. We were going to have shortages of labour, and this may be a case. I mean, I'm totally pro-vaccination. I've had it, of course. I encourage everybody to have it. It's totally safe. We need as many people as possible to do it. But the reality is this is causing a bit of division in society, and it may cause issues at schools and that sort of thing. So what we've basically said is there should be a mandated testing regime as an alternative for those that just simply won't get it, as a way we can frequently and accurately test people, and hopefully it won't be that many people, but just to kind of maintain that level of skills and level of workforce availability. But we're doing very well as a country in terms of tracking.
Melissa, do you agree that 1st of December, like National is also calling for as a Freedom Day, that no matter if it is 85 or 89, that the government should open up the country and go to the light system?
Well, I think what the government has actually done is actually create a lot of confusion. And one of the things that I just want to start off by doing is actually challenging Dr. Gaurav Sharma's actually comment saying that, we've done really, really well. I like to thank everyone who's actually been vaccinated. And I think the rates have actually, finally actually sort of getting up there. But the thing is that when Delta hit, we only had 20% of the eligible population that was vaccinated. And, we talk about the team of 5 million. I mean, everybody wanted to eliminate COVID and everybody followed the rules last year. We were locked down several times and, we did really, really well. But the thing is that what the government should have done is actually expected. I mean, Gaurav is a doctor, so she should know. I mean, there should be different variants that are supposed, could come into the country and they should have planned for it. But instead they waited. The rollout of the vaccination was really, really slow. And then we actually find ourselves in this situation. I mean, it's such a long time now. We're coming up, this time lockdown, we're talking about 90 days now. And we are not open. And airlines are actually going to say, well, if New Zealand's not open, when are we're going to miss New Zealand by?
So, Melissa, you say that open up the country on 1st?
We should.
Okay. Gold Race, do you agree with that?
I think it's pretty dangerous for politicians to be saying in an ad hoc manner that we should set dates for opening anything up that's a medical question. So I do think, in the Green Party sense, believes in the I agree with Melissa that they can roll out what actually is but here we are. We're at the rate of we know that
we're just having we're just having a little bit problems hearing you. Yeah, sorry, that's much better now.
Is that better?
So can you just briefly?
I guess what I would say is the vaccine rollout has been delayed, and I agree with Melissa in that, and I think that's a fair criticism. But we are here at not quite 90% now, and we have to keep to the medical advice. We can't just set arbitrary dates. It's playing politics with something that's actually a public health question.
Gaurav?
But Gaurav, I mean, what Gaurav was actually talking about in terms of, we've done really, really well, Gaurav, is that if the government has a target, and I mean, population actually knows too, then they can all get vaccinated, and knowing full well that we're going to open up on a particular date is what I'm actually talking about. People in New Zealand should know when the target is, and the government hasn't actually really set a target going 90%. Initially, it was 90% double vax, and then when Auckland hit 90% first vaccination, they go, oh yeah, we've done it. Well, it's not quite like that, is it?
I mean,
if we're to reach double vax 90%, when is that going to be?
What do you say to that?
Yeah, look, I would say, that's not how incentives work. You don't say to people, well, we're going to open up on 1st of December, and people just line up because the country is going to open up. I completely agree with what Gulraj is saying. This is a public health issue, and we need to make sure we do follow that public health advice. Probably won't take it from the National Party, which has sort of been unsure. Every time the leader changes, it's like open the country, close the country, vaccinate, don't vaccinate. I mean,
oh dear.
Who knows what's happening this week? And when Judith Collins goes next week, it might actually change to something else. So,
I mean, I do have a question for the government, though, in terms of our ethnic communities' response. I think the question is more, given that we need to get to 90%, and that is a medical, minimum for vaccinations, really. I mean, we should be aiming for much higher than that if we're going to open up completely. Instead of setting an arbitrary date, like what ACT and National are asking for, I would ask, how is the government actually going to facilitate our ethnic communities in particular, as well as Māori and Pacific, those communities that have got trouble accessing public health, to get to that point, to actively push us to that point by the 1st of December, hopefully, because we know that if we don't get there, we shouldn't open up.
Gaurav, there's a question that every week, someone's asking, every week it's a different story. So people are getting mixed messages. How do you answer that?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to answer quickly what Gulraj is talking about is, how do we, make sure that more ethnic communities get involved and do get to that 90% vaccination rate. So, for example, in Hamilton, what we did is, we got 130 organizations together first to talk about what is it that people feel they can offer and where are the gaps. So what we did, for example, is the Indian community got involved and helped out at CVAC centers and vaccination centers. The Pakistani community was cooking food and offering those as incentives. The Colombian community was helping set up Zoom calls to
that's all great. I think
but that's the question there. That's what Gulraj is asking. But how can we work together? The DHP offered 1,000 vouchers for their swimming pools and all sorts of facilities. The local, so the Red Cross got involved and helped us translate information in various languages.
Well, Gaurav, if you're actually so concerned about how everybody could actually work together, perhaps the government could have included the opposition.
Languages to people.
Gaurav.
We had languages, and we had information in Arabic, we had in Hindi, Punjabi for people.
Okay, that's great. That's great. But Gaurav, give me a plan.
There is a plan, like the government has, the Prime Minister has talked about on 29th of November, the vaccination rates will be reviewed. Auckland is quite likely to come out of, the current levels and go into a traffic light system. The traffic light system is very well explained everywhere. So, I think the comment that, it is confusing, I don't agree with that. There is a plan in place, and on 29th of November, things will be reviewed, especially for Auckland.
Okay, James, I'll come to you about the MIQ, right?
Sure.
Do you think it's a wasted space?
Well, it's a really interesting point because
Okay, just wait. I'll rephrase it. Is it a
Okay.
wasted space for communities wanting to go overseas who have not seen their other families? Okay, we're talking about a humanitarian crisis here. We're talking about families going and families returning. We're talking about New Zealand citizens, right? So for that, is it a wasted space when you are double vaccinated? Go on.
Yeah, so the risk profile has obviously changed enormously over the last little while. If you've got 300 or 400 new cases in the community every day, someone might say, well, if someone's double vaxxed, what's really the risk profile with that now coming in? So, look, we've support home isolation. We would like to see more of that. If you're double vaccinated, you should be allowed to come into New Zealand and isolate at home. We've also talked about private MIQ to facilitate that, the high-risk situations, high-risk countries, people who may not be vaccinated, for instance, to supplement the standard MIQ. MIQ has been a total humanitarian disaster. It is backed up by a shocking immigration system that barely works together with it. I'd have to disagree before comments about how we've had this Hail Mary and how our immigration and MIQ system has been solved. No, I don't think that's quite correct, and happy to elaborate more on that. So, the state of MIQ is kind of in flux at the moment, but what I would like to see is the border reopening as quickly as possible, and the government simply acknowledging that the risk profile has changed, and that if people are fully vaccinated, if they're coming from relatively safe countries, then home isolation should be absolutely a first option, because when you're talking hundreds of new cases a day and a new traffic light system, it just doesn't change things that much. So,
Gorez, I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. You are disagreeing. Why?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I just the phrase relatively safe country really scared me, because this isn't the kind of virus where you want to go, well, we're relatively safe. But I do hear what James is saying. I just want to bring to the fore, I'm immunocompromised. I have an autoimmune illness, but this applies to anyone who's, for example, survived cancer, anyone who's got asthma. These are people in all of our communities, our elderly, and we know in ethnic communities, we actually take care of our elderly. So I just want to bring that to the fore when we talk about opening the borders, when we talk about opening up more generally. What we're talking about is those of us who are at most risk, or even those of us who live with grandparents or someone who has had chemo or has asthma or whatever, having to shut down. They would have to go to level 4 lockdown if the country suddenly opens up and we have Delta running rampant. That's what we're talking about. But having said that, we know that since the start of this outbreak, and since, well before now, migrant communities have suffered systems. So we know that we could have prioritized migrant communities being reunited, for example, in the MIQ system. We could have left space for them and treated migrant communities as being as important a part of New Zealand society as everybody else. And we didn't do that. So they're suffering most. That doesn't mean we need to open up. It means we need equality in our system.
But don't you accept that Delta is here now? It's as dangerous as opening the border. It's walking around our community. It's going through different states. So sooner or later, I don't think, New Zealand, all parts of New Zealand will have Delta, like it or not. It may be 3 months down the road, but, should that stop families from being reunited?
No, I believe in family reunification should be prioritized now. But that means through a safe MIQ system. That doesn't mean we just open up the borders. Our migrant communities have never asked for the borders just to be opened up. They've actually just asked for space like every other New Zealander to be able to reunite. And now it's been so long. These are kids being separated from their parents, their husbands and wives. Families have been ripped apart, and they've never been asking for the borders just to be opened up and for New Zealand to be put at risk. And I think the government could have done it much sooner and could start now.
That is right, because Ricardo mentioned on this program or with Weekender that he's still surprised that India is on the higher risk.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we've got cases coming, or we've got cases ramping in Russia and Europe with winters coming. We know that COVID spreads during winter. Melissa, do you agree that India should get off the high risk list?
Well, I think anybody, I mean, the important thing, and to a degree, I actually agree with Goris, but also disagree with her in that, we didn't just say just open up to anybody who's coming into New Zealand. I think when we actually set a target of December 1, I mean, there were actually things that people had to do before they could come to New Zealand, like being double vaxxed and having a COVID test before they actually board a plane. So, and when you actually look at the MIQ system, there were a lot of people who come to New Zealand who actually, when they're at MIQ, we didn't have too many incursions of recent time, but we actually had more COVID in our community. So when you actually look at that, you have to sort of go, hang on a minute, MIQ was actually a lot safer than it used to be. So there needs to be a system. So it's not just, throw the, doors wide open to people who are not vaccinated. So that's not the case. And I think in terms of, migrants who are actually separated, I mean, my heart breaks for them. I mean, I've got a case, in my own, not my electorate, but I'm a List MP base there. But, I've got a case where a man who had actually last year contacted me, who was actually stranded in Palau Island, who had actually gone there for work. When we actually locked our country, he couldn't come back, and Palau closed as well, and he couldn't get a flight out of Palau. And I contacted the minister to see if there was actually a contingency plan for people like him who could actually come back to New Zealand on MIQ to actually give those people some space. And I was told no. And he literally had to go and actually just book randomly the dates that he could potentially come out. When you don't have a flight booking on a commercial flight, you can't book an MIQ system. So this guy couldn't get out of Palau. Eventually, New Zealand won't accept him. He's a New Zealand citizen. Now he's based in the States. Had to go and, bunk out, couch surfing at his relative's house. He still cannot come in. MIQ is an absolute joke. It's a nightmare. It's actually a cruel system. And I think National Party has actually called for a royal commission to look at how this has actually gone to custard.
Gaurav, a New Zealand citizen with a PR person or a partner, the partner has to spend 2 weeks in a isolation in another country. Do you think for a family that is fair?
Look, these are unprecedented times, and it's not easy making these decisions. But I would say the first person to speak about it within even the caucus, because I asked the question and I said, why was India put on that list when it initially started? And it was, what's interesting to see is that New Zealand's response has always been based on science. Even before the numbers were rising, and and every news channel was filled with graves and cremations all across India. A week before that, government had said that the numbers in India was rising. It was based on science. It was based on facts, based on information. And I have to admit, I was the first person to say to the government, why did we do that? And we saw what happened. We were doing fundraisers in Hamilton, in Auckland, to send oxygen cylinders and concentrators.
Yeah, Gaurav, we are having the same problem in Russia. We're having the same problem in Germany, in Europe. Okay, India is just one country.
Yes, but that's when you look at the data. The number of people coming from India and the number of positives. There was a point when we ran out of a space at Jet Park, which was a quarantine facility, because everyone, like the mass majority of people who were coming from India, were testing positive. So you have to look at it. Where a lot of migrants are coming from as well. Like how many people are coming from Russia? How many people are coming from other parts?
But isn't that a reason to prioritize people coming back from India? Because if they have a link to New Zealand such that they're a permanent resident or citizen, and there's that many people coming from India, that's actually a reason to prioritize them rather than to cut them off.
But people have had a long time to come back home as well. I am meeting people in the community, and you're not going to believe this. I met with a lady who said to me, I went back to Gujarat, to India for a holiday. Best time to go for a holiday. Guess what? There's not enough people on the streets. Great, everything's so cheap. You should also go for a holiday there. So there are a lot of people who are going back.
No, that's a callous approach. People haven't just gone for holiday. Yes, there are people who are desperate to come home and they haven't been prioritized. They've been cut off. Even on the day that they were cut off, I checked this. The stats in terms of COVID in the US and UK had twice before that been higher than the daily stats of India. And
there are a lot of factors that go into this. One of them is obviously about the testing regime in India. What happened with how many thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people died in 1 or 2, 3 weeks.
That's history. That's history, right? I'm talking about as of today, the 14th of November, 2021. India has gone way past in vaccination, right? We may not accept the vaccine that they're giving, but look at the results. It's not to say the cases won't be there, just like the entire globe. Right?
Yeah, and the government is definitely looking at it, and it's not a political decision. It's based on science, it's based on public health, and that's the advice the government.
But what I'm talking and what people are asking on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube is that what about family reunifications? James, what do you think?
I think I'm still muted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. It says the host has muted my mic, so I don't quite know. Right. So it's in terms of this high-risk country thing. It's an antiquated feature that came out some time ago. Brazil, Fiji, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, I think Papua New Guinea, and we thought it was this one-off temporary thing, but it's just kind of stuck there. And I can't explain why those countries are still on this list. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't reflect the reality around the world. It makes things intensely difficult. You've got people in those countries having to go to a second country. If they're in India, for example, a lot of the people I know go to Nepal, or they try to go somewhere else on a border region to fulfill that requirement to come to New Zealand. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why it's there. It's just another stupid policy relating to MIQ and immigration. So.
But I think, what Gaurav says, which is true, being a doctor and from a health point of view, from a medical point of view, it is, they have to take the medical point of view into account when they are, trying to restrict the flow of people, etc.
Yeah, but I think they did at the time. I think absolutely they did at the time. It made sense. They blacklisted those countries and they forgot to renew it or something because it's just, I don't know. Doesn't make any sense.
Hopefully, the four of you can advocate on behalf of the ethnic communities in the coming week.
I do want to say, these countries are regularly reviewed, and we are definitely reviewing them on a regular basis. The ministers are, and the public health system is definitely reviewing them on that basis. But this is not to say that these issues don't exist, and they do exist for the migrant communities, and they exist for the rest of the New Zealanders as well. There are people here who are saying, I want to come back home. I haven't seen my family for a long time, and I live in UK or USA or wherever it is, and they are having issues getting through MIQ. So I do completely acknowledge that. It's not that these issues don't exist, but there is a lot of public health element to these decision making.
Sure. No, we respect that. Melissa, recently there's about 27,000 odd businesses that have been struck off from the company's office in the last 8 months. Surely, the small businesses, of whom majority of them are migrants themselves, tradies, or look at barbers at the moment, and other takeaway places. For example, I spoke to someone yesterday. They're saying the malls are open. There is hardly 2 meter distance, but I can't have people in my restaurant, right? So what do you think the government needs to do for small businesses?
Well, I think the government already sort of decided that. I mean, when the rules came in, there were such ridiculous rules that dairies could actually open with one person going in and one person out, and then butchers and greengrocers couldn't actually operate. And we actually tried to. I'm sure that there'll be many MPs, including every party, who would have actually questioned those as well. Whereas, ethnic supermarkets were not allowed to open while, European supermarkets were open, when sometimes ethnic supermarkets are bigger than, Countdown or New World, right? And so those things have actually sort of balanced out a little bit. But when you actually sort of say, I mean, when was the last time I had a haircut? My goodness, I need to go see my hairdresser. I need to get my nails done. It is ridiculous. We cannot have these kinds of services available to us. And I know.
Right.
Thanks, Goris. but the thing is that I know that Goris is compromised, and I completely understand that we don't want to put people like Goris at risk. But the thing is that more and more people in New Zealand are vaccinated, and the thing is that businesses actually know how to operate having one customer come in, making sure that things are sanitized, and when the rules need to be fair, and we need to actually make sure that all businesses are actually supported. Even subsidies haven't really helped. I mean, wage support has been, fantastic for people so that, their staff can actually sort of be paid. Resurgence payments have been helpful, but the thing is that they didn't actually do anything for the rent support, for example. They recently passed a legislation saying that they can actually go into arbitration. But the thing is that, National proposed a way out so that, government could potentially pay 50%, landlord 25%, and, tenant 25%. That could have actually really helped some of these businesses out. And when all of us would have actually spoken to our small businesses in our own electorates, yeah? And these people are heartbroken. These people are losing their life savings, businesses that they poured their heart and soul into, and they're crying on the other end of the phone. And it just breaks my heart every time I talk to them.
James, I'll come to you. Do you think the small businesses are hurting across the country, or is it just Auckland?
Well, across the country for sure. I mean, with limits and uncertainty and labour shortages and government regulation on what they can do, but that's certainly in Auckland, obviously, especially. So, incredibly long lockdown in Auckland. Waikato, of course, where I'm based, is still in a lockdown. So, we've talked about this as all the irregularities and confusion around different businesses operating and who can't and who can. I think we definitely need to move out of this as quickly as possible, because we just cannot have our small businesses falling over as we come into recovery. It certainly doesn't make sense. Some of the things, as we raised in Parliament the other day, why are you allowed to get Botox in Auckland but you can't get a haircut? It's nonsense.
You're more than welcome to come here. Gaurav, I know that you go across the country. What are you hearing, and what is the Labour Party looking at doing more for small hurting mum and dads who have got their life savings bleeding?
Yeah, so look, in the last few months before the lockdown, I was traveling across the country talking to especially ethnic businesses. So we were in Taupo, we had over 30 businesses there. We were in New Plymouth, Queenstown, Christchurch, Wellington, Auckland. And obviously there's a range of issues. Obviously, everyone's been impacted by COVID, but in a very different way, because it's based on your geography, it's based on the type of business you've got. Specifically, what's happened with this outbreak, obviously with the lockdown, some businesses have not been able to open or have had to open in a restricted way. So since August, we've given $1.7 billion in Auckland in wage subsidy. $284 million in Waikato has been given in wage subsidy. Overall, 17 billion were given in different support schemes since last year. The Resurgence Support Scheme has been doubled to $43,000. There's $7,000 now in terms of helping business plan through this COVID-19. So a lot of support system has been built in to help businesses, whether it's financially, through mental health, supporting people and keeping their employees employed through the system. But I do acknowledge, again, there will be some businesses who are suffering a little bit more. Before we went into lockdown, we were talking to some businesses in hospitality who were talking about issues with hiring people. And now with the new residency, 160,000, people being eligible for residency, there would, a lot of those issues will be automatically resolved. But, ethnic businesses, just like mainstream businesses, are definitely being affected by COVID, but there are different support schemes available to them financially and otherwise in making sure that...
I'll come to Glorious. You probably traveled around the world and around New Zealand a lot, but the ethnic businesses that we are talking about, some of them come empty-handed. And some of the recent migrants, first thing they do is they set up some shop or something. And they,
Even when we come from a different profession, and my parents did this, absolutely,
Sure. And what Gaurav is saying, and to a certain degree, not many countries in the world have supported their people the way that the government has supported. Is that enough?
That's right. Well, absolutely, targeted subsidies for business was essential to, and you know, again, let's come back to we are a team, and there's only one way to get through a pandemic, which is to kind of take care of everyone, right? So we do need to keep holding that. We need to look at the wage subsidy and any kind of subsidy for business as being part of a pandemic response, a public health response. That's what we need to get back to normal. So for me, it comes back to the vaccine rollout. It comes back to how much the government, actually failed to roll out the vaccines early enough so that we did get to a higher than 90% vaccination so that business could go back. That being said, we're at the place that we're at now, so it's about knowing how to support business so that we don't have people returning into hospitality businesses where you can't wear a mask, you're eating and drinking, talking to people and passing on a virus that's as infectious as this. Because yet we are, there's, you know, and you've used the phrase, and people use it all the time, there's mum and dad businesses, but we're ethnic communities. We also have grandmas. We've got kids that, you know, intergenerationally live together, and we would hate for this to spread through our communities. That's what's at stake. So absolutely, we need the public health response to work. Absolutely, that means, and I agree with Melissa, we actually needed the rental support much earlier. And we needed migrant workers to be included in the wage subsidy. They weren't. So let's remember that migrants haven't been getting the support that everybody else has been getting at business level or at work. All of these things need to be rolled into one to make sure we actually beat this thing. Because that's a great, if we're gonna prioritize even the economy, and I mean I don't agree with that as someone who would really suffer with this virus, but even if you're prioritizing the economy will crash if the COVID virus runs rampant in New Zealand. So holding steady to that teamwork and to the public health advice is absolutely key to saving our ethnic communities as people, as communities, but also as businesses.
Thank you.
And I think
the last one. Yes, last one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, you know, you would find that a lot of ethnic communities would rather, businesses, particularly small businesses, ethnic community businesses would rather actually be able to work and actually not rely on the government. And when you actually look at the fact that since Delta outbreak, more than 8,000 people have actually, and half of them actually from Auckland, have moved onto the job seeker benefit. I mean, this is something that ethnic communities don't want to do. But the thing is that there are a lot of people who would have actually had to depend on that. And I think and I totally agree. I mean, you know, we need to have a health response, and that's always been the priority. Having said that, but you can't just look at health and not actually ignore the economy. We need to actually sort of say, okay, we have the health response. How do we actually maintain the businesses so that people can actually open up safely? And that's where the government has actually failed. And when you actually look at rules for different businesses, one for dairies, what's the difference between a dairy and a butcher or a greengrocer? There were different rules. This is what I'm talking about. And the government needed to be very clear. And when you actually sort of say, you know, the rules are really clear, I'm not so sure if step 1, 2, 3 in level 3 and traffic light system, the announcement actually make Aucklanders go, wow, that's really perfectly clear. And when the government decided to say, oh, we might have a lottery system to leave Auckland, even Chris Hipkins, Grant Robertson, and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern actually disagree. All three of them have different answers for that. So I don't think they're actually in tune with each other either.
Well,
Can I just put I'm just going to say, yes, the system isn't perfect, especially when it started, because, you know, it was a global pandemic. Nobody had seen this before. And when the system was put in place, you know, things were changed based on feedback. Things are still being continuously changed based on feedback. And that's how it works, right? Nobody has foreseen something like this before. But also talking about, you know, I've been talking to business associations in Waikato. We've been talking to the Economic Development Agency. And they agree that, you know, if you open up too soon, then what? You know, let's go to level 2 and level 1. Then what? You know, COVID is going to be rampant. We're getting 10 to 15 cases in Waikato. Auckland's getting 100 plus cases. What if we get 200 cases a day? Then what's going to happen? People are not going to be eligible to get the wage subsidy, but people are also not going to be out there shopping freely. Do you think people are going to be out in the Christmas, you know, buying things when there's going to be 200 cases in Hamilton City? I don't think so. But at the same time, they won't be eligible for wage subsidy. So, you know, then the businesses are going to suffer again. So completely acknowledge, the situation isn't perfect, and that's how pandemic works, right? But we are very close to getting 90% vaccination, and then the business is opening in a systematic way. There is a full planning into place. So it's not just
let's hope we get to 90%. Thank you so much, Gaurav, Melissa, Golrace, and James, for your time. I know we've got over the time. I've got another guest waiting patiently in the lobby. Thank you so much, and I do hope you have a lovely week coming up, and we will certainly talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was very entertaining discussions we had there. We're going to have a quick break, and then I will be joined by an ex-Black Caps player, Jeff Allett, who's just left the New Zealand Cricket Board after serving 8 years, for his expert comments. Before that, we'll have a break, and we'll also hear from New Zealand Black Caps coach Gary Stead about the big match tonight. So please stay with us, and we'll see you within a few seconds.
Good. It's exciting. The guys are definitely up for the challenge that's ahead of us, and we know it's a really strong Australian side that have come off a really good win versus Pakistan as well. But likewise, we have versus England as well. Wicket out there, and it looks, I guess, a little bit more on the drier side than other games that we've seen. But whether that's a factor or not, it's hard to know for sure. They've had 12 games here, I think, at Dubai, all won by the chasing team, and just had a chat with the groundsman, and interesting that he said, well, dew hasn't really been a factor either. So maybe it's just an anomaly, or maybe there is a slight change. Are things that certainly I think both teams will probably want to chase. So Daryl Mitchell will replace Devon Conway in the test squad to tour India. So as I said earlier, tough on Devon. Really, it's I guess a mistake that he's made, that he is paying the price for now. But and Daryl, we have a player who's come into the squad who's full of confidence, who has a lot of experience, can cover a lot of batting positions for us as well.
Thanks, Gary.
That was New Zealand Black Caps coach Gary Stead speaking from Dubai about tonight's big game between the Black Caps and the Aussies for the T20 World Cup. I'm now joined by Jeff Allett, who is a ex-Black Caps, played in the World Cup teams, a very fine left-arm fast bowler. And also, not only that, he served on the New Zealand Cricket Board for over 8 years and has just recently stepped down. And besides that, he's also a very successful businessman, working with a great team in India, where people would say that it's hard to do business in India, but he's done his own work and done really well there, and serving the Indian market over there. Good evening, Jeff. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Sunil. Lovely to be on the show. Thank you.
Thanks for your time, Jeff. We've got a big game tonight. How do you think the team is preparing? And obviously, everyone will hope New Zealand wins. But Gary mentioned there the toss is important. What's your viewpoint?
Yeah, it will be important, but I think both of these sides are good enough and experienced enough, Sunil, that they will prepare to do both. They're pretty much both on a roll. I think New Zealand hadn't played a lot together actually as a T20 side, but of course we had individuals that had been involved in the IPL in the UAE, which I think is really having or showing the benefit of that probably in the play that we've seen in the performances of some of the individuals. So hell of a matchup, and obviously a huge amount of excitement around the world. Actually, it's been fantastic.
So you think toss is not that much important, given that the teams have played there well?
the statistics would not suggest that, Sunil. They certainly, most sides will want to chase, but that said, I think Chennai Super Kings actually proved that you can do the opposite and have success. So I think a lot of it will come down to mindset. A lot of it will come down to just having, those 2 or 3 or 4 players that have got that experience to be able to handle the initial pressure and go about their job, set yourselves up for a big, or to get runs on the board, I guess, if you put in, and to create pressure in a final that then will hopefully pay dividends. So, look, no doubt about it. I think Gary mentioned the sides are likely to both want to do the same thing, but they're professional enough to prepare for the opposite.
Sure. GA, most of the people would want to know, being, you've served as on the New Zealand Cricket Board in 8 years. The world has seen the team develop so much, under Henson and, now under Gary and others. What has been the secret formula? Going back to when Ross was there and, there was an uproar in the New Zealand cricket side when, he was replaced for Brendan as the captain. But what's the secret that has come through, or what is the main ingredients that now the world really loves the Black Caps, even on their mannerism on the field? I mean, how has it changed? I mean, they don't seem to be sledging. What's going on?
No, and that's very much not in their game. You will have seen a huge change just all around the culture of the side. I think Brendan McCullum, the fearlessness that he brought, and then with the coaching staff, with the probably expertise around making sure the players knew their game, knew their role within the side, and then the change of this team first approach. So sacrifices to be made from individuals for the good of the team, and I think that's really it's actually boded well for the team both on and off the park. But actually, more than that, it's certainly been taken up by New Zealand Cricket Organisation as well. So even right through from the board into management and into our major associations, it's all about the culture. And I think what you're seeing there is an element of calmness, confidence in their ability, but determination to become world class as individuals, and then being prepared to sacrifice for your mates. And I think that's showing on the park. They also, having said that, as it was a great example with Daryl Mitchell, this month, in the last game, was, they also understand that the game is one part of their lives, but they also have some really important things, some aspects, whānau and what people think of them in terms of, their own values. They are important to them as well. And I think that combination is developing a terrific culture. And I think it's a real credit to the personalities that are there as well. I would just add one other thing, that we have an amazing high performance manager, Brian Stronach, who's also has a philosophy around even at a selecting point of view, is selecting good people. And I think that whilst that's real general, it's really important that when people come into the team, that they're ready. They're the right type of personality, that they're prepared to listen, prepared to learn, prepared to sacrifice for the team. And I think you're seeing the results of that.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, thanks for answering that question around the high performance, because if you see in the way back in the South African team, John T. Rhodes and all, they used to feel really fearlessly. And then it came into the New Zealand team. And, people were in awe, and now every team kind of follows that pattern there. And I think it's great to see such habits and values being transferred to our grassroots level. And, as a board, I think New Zealand Cricket's done really well to implant those values in our younger players so that they become really, contributing in the national and the international field. What my next question was, after this, whatever happens tonight, the team goes to India, right? How do you change your mindset?
Look, I think it's a really good question, and particularly there you're referring to probably from T20 to Test cricket.
Yeah.
And yes, we've got I think 3 T20s before the Test series, but these guys are really professional. To be fair, they've come from IPL to Test series in the past. New Zealand cricket has very much supported players being involved in the IPL. The learnings there, I think we're seeing some of the benefit of, where players are rubbing shoulders. They're learning from great environments. They're learning conditions. They're able to deal and cope with those conditions. So actually, and ironically, going from a T20 now for these players, because they're so confident in how they need to adapt, they know their game, they know what steps they need to take to change how they play. And I think we had good examples of that when we had, a number of players that came from the IPL over to England just prior to the World Test Championship. And, they fitted in really well. They were prepared well, and they performed well, most importantly. So, a lot of that does rest on the shoulders of the players themselves, that they prepare well. And, we have the confidence in them, or New Zealand cricket has the confidence in them to be able to do that task. So, but a hell of an exciting Test series. And I know whilst the players are really focused, obviously, on this tournament and hopefully winning a world title, they are also very much looking forward to the Test series in India.
Okay, I know, I introduced you as a cricketer and, who played very well, but not many people know that you're also a passionate businessman, who's developed a company from a very small thing and gone to India. And when many people said to you, India is a very hard market, how did you break that market?
A couple of things there is that, we talk about team and we talk about selflessness and the like in sport. The same thing applies to business. We had part of my business partner was prepared to spend some time, 3 or 4 years in India, helping to set up our business, our unique operation, I guess, over there. So we recognised early on that we would need to invest in the country, and by that, that we would need to set up a subsidiary in India. We're now in 4 cities, working across 26 cities. Four offices, and so it's taken a lot of time and effort. So you need to have courage, I guess. You need to have perseverance, and have reasonable amount of resourcing. But most importantly, it comes back to the people. The people need to believe, and I'm really proud of those shareholders that are involved in our business, and particularly our staff that are working in India. They have been unbelievable. And so come back to the team, it really has come down to that. We've sort of united all of our strengths, and we are sort of paving a bit of a way forward. And hopefully, that's not just to the benefit of our own business, but hopefully in the future for other New Zealand businesses, because we all know the potential of the Indian market for New Zealand companies.
How many years did it, take you for a hard grind before you saw the success coming through?
I'm going to say certainly over 5. And I think that's because we chose, to be frank, the model that was probably the tougher option. That was setting up, subsidiaries in India. It was making sure we took our time to really understand the market. As we all know, relationships are key. And what I really loved is that the businesses in India weren't just prepared to just take on anybody. You had to prove yourself. You had to prove your model. For us dealing in the F&B side of it, we had to make sure that we could deliver as we said we would. And for some companies, some big major hotel chains, such as Marriott, ITC, Oberoi, etc., they wanted to make sure that we could deliver. And that was great. So we were quite happy to take the time to prove to them the model. And subsequently, we now, I think, are dealing with over 400 5-star hotels. So, it's been a long journey, but we certainly went into it with our eyes open, and we were warned of such by some very wise NZTE staff based in Delhi. And we've received terrific support from them to also help us with our success.
Sure. I know you've given me a lot of time, more than allocated. But look, just before you go, it's one of those questions. But what do you think about tonight?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly exciting. What I've been delighted about, Sunil, is actually just everywhere I'm heading, I'm hearing stories. People are deciding whether they're going to get up or not, or whether they're going to watch the replay. But the great thing from my perspective for the country actually is that there's this little bit of excitement in and around potentially a New Zealand sport winning another world title. That's exciting. So, from yes, I'm biased. I'm a cricket lover. But equally, I think it's been great that New Zealand's had potentially having a wee slight distraction from the issues we're facing. And I'm really hopeful, obviously, and I'm quietly confident that our guys are going to go out and they'll take Australia on, and it will come down to little micro moments in the game. It'll be a couple of balls, it'll be a catch, it'll be a couple of sixes, as we've seen in other games. So it's a bit of a buckle in and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, see, enjoying the ride is the most difficult thing. I know it's only 20 overs, first 2 overs, yeah, but then you start worrying when the run rate goes up, when you need 11 in the last 10. But let's hope for the best, whatever they do. Obviously we all want them to win, but they've already won given the way they have performed for a small nation. And like I think Sydney Morning Herald mentioned that New Zealand's found a new love for the sports and a new team replacing All Blacks. It's a great thing. There's a comment: if New Zealand wins this T20, then they will script the history by winning 2 ICC tournaments in a single year. I mean, don't you think that's amazing?
It is amazing, and I must admit, many moons ago, I was involved in administration with New Zealand cricket. And I can remember at the time thinking, gee, it would be great to be in the top 3 in the world in T20s, Test cricket, and ODIs. And, just prior to this, just confirming, we're ranked number 1 in Test cricket. We're ranked number 1 in ODI cricket. And here we are, on the world stage, having a chance to win the ICC T20 World Cup. So, again, I think incredible kudos has to go to the players, to the coaching staff, and our own high performance management. I think really exciting. And what I love best of all, Sunil, to be honest, is you mentioned it earlier on, is there's a lot of young girls and boys that are now picking up cricket bats and having some fun on the beach, or getting their mates along and having some fun after school. And that is what it's all about. I think if it's these guys will love the fact they'll be out there representing New Zealand proud, and I can assure you they'll be giving it everything they've got.
Thank you so much, Jeff Allard, for your time. Really appreciate it. And, like all of us, we hope the Black Caps win tonight. Thank you so much for your time. Good evening. Well, folks, that was our show for today. Great discussions around MIQ and immigration, those who are stranded offshore and locally, around the vaccination project, how it's going. We do hope that the country gets out of lockdown into the traffic light system so that we can get some sort of a normality back. But normality can only be back if we all get vaccinated. Yes, it is your choice. Make the right choice, because stats have proven, medically it's proven, that the number of people in hospitals is less of those who've had double jab. It's free. So do it for yourself and your family. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next Sunday. Good night.